friends, my name is Jess and welcome back to my channel, Books Past Bedtime. If you couldn't tell by the thumbnail and title, today I'm going to be doing a book haul. So this is going to be like an all-encompassing book haul. This is all of the books that I have acquired in the past 6 months since the beginning of 2022. Haven't done a book haul at all yet this year, so we've got a lot to get through. I am pretty sure I have exactly 60 books here, so grab a snack, grab a drink, and let's get into it. But first, I do want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Blackstone Publishing. Blackstone Publishing very kindly sent me a copy of Pinion Scorpion and the Barbershop Detectives by Rick Bleiweiss. This book is set in 1910 and it follows our main character Scorpion, who is the new chief police investigator in the sleepy English town of Haxford. And it isn't long that Scorpion is in town before the town finds it needs a detective. And luckily for Scorpion, he is old acquaintances with the barber in this barbershop in this town, and so he enlists the help of everyone in this barbershop to kind of help him solve this mystery. All of the patrons in this barbershop are a colorful collection of characters that really add a lot to this story, and thus ensues a quirky, fun mystery story that is perfect for fans of Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot. This definitely sounds like the perfect, fun summer mystery to read by the pool, so I'm super excited to get to this one and see what it's all about. And I know Rick Bleiweiss does have a second book in this series scheduled for early next year, and this book has also been optioned for a TV series, so now is the perfect time to get your hands on this book if you're interested. I have a link in the description down below. Definitely follow that and get your hands on this book if it sounds interesting to you. I really think I'm going to enjoy this one, and I'm sure you guys will too. So thank you again to Blackstone Publishing for sponsoring this video, and let's just hop right into the book haul. So I do have everything separated into categories here. So I have some fantasy books, I have some mystery thrillers, I have some romance, and then I have like a little small miscellaneous pile. But as you know, if you watch this channel regularly, fantasy, mystery, and romance are my main genres. So because we just finished talking about Pinion Scorpion, let's jump right into the thriller books that I have to haul. These really are in no particular order other than their genre category. So in no particular order, the first book I have on my stack here is Verity by Colleen Hoover. I have already read this book along with quite a few that are in this pile. This is a psychological thriller following our main character Lowen, who is an author, and she is offered this ghostwriting job to keep writing this really popular series of books that the original author can no longer write as she is in a coma. And while she's writing these books, she goes to this author's house and starts hooking up with her husband. But the author is also still there in the house and might not be as comatose as everyone seems to think. As far as thrillers go, I thought this one was kind of average, but it was still a fun time. I think I give it 3 stars. Next book, I have The Last Flight by Julie Clark. This is actually just kind of on loan to me from one of my friends, but I thought I would throw it in here since it is a book that I have that I need to read that I hauled this year. This is a mystery thriller following these 2 women who meet in an airport, and I think that they are both kind of unsatisfied with their lives. They decide to switch tickets and go to the opposite destinations that they were planning to, except one woman makes it and the other woman does not, as her plane is involved in a terrible crash. Our main character has to decide whether she is going to continue to take on this identity and leave her previous life, or what she's gonna do. So I've heard mediocre things about this one, but as a flight attendant, I do love aviation related things, so I feel like I would probably like this one. Next book I have here is kind of more sci-fi, but I feel like it reads like a thriller. Blake Crouch, I feel like his books read like thrillers, so I'm including this here. This is Upgrade by Blake Crouch, his newest release, and this is a story about our main character Logan, who is targeted for a genome upgrade, and he can suddenly like see clearer, hear better. He's kind of just like been upgraded as a human, but there's something like dark and twisted going on. He also didn't really agree to this, so I would assume this book is about the consequences and repercussions of this and what it means for him and the world at large. I'm super excited for this one. I love dark matter. Recursion was kind of messed, so I'm hopeful that this one will be a hit for me. The next book on my list is It Girl by Ruth Ware. I also just got this one from Book of the Month this month. Ruth Ware has been pretty hit or miss for me recently, but I'm hopeful for this one. This one is following our main character Hannah. When she was in college, her best friend April ended up dying, I think at the end of their first year, and somebody was convicted, but it's coming out later, 10 years later, that this person that was originally convicted may be innocent of the crime. And so all of these old like wounds and traumas from Hannah's past are opening up, and she kind of starts reconnecting with old friends from that time and starts to realize that they may have been hiding a murder. April probably didn't die the way everyone thought she did. This sounds pretty good. I'm hopeful. And it also kind of is giving me like In My Dreams I Hold a Knife vibes by Ashley Winstead, which is the next book that I'm gonna haul here in this video. And I did read this one already and I really enjoyed it. This is a dark academia thriller following our main character Jessica, who is returning to her college reunion 10 years after graduating from college. She hasn't seen a lot of her friends since then, and there is one big thing that's kind of kept them apart, and that is the unsolved murder of their friend Heather that happened while they were in college. There are some people that aren't willing to let this murder lay unsolved, and they think they know who did it. So they're determined to reveal that at this college reunion. This book just kind of like spirals out of control. It takes place over like just a couple of days. It was so fast paced and good. I really enjoyed this. One of my favorite thrillers of the year so far. Would definitely recommend if you haven't picked this one up already. Next on my stack is Sundial by Catriona Ward. This is, I think, almost more of a horror story maybe, but we're following our main characters Rob and Callie. Callie is Rob's daughter, and they are both kind of not connecting with each other, kind of worried about one another for very different reasons. But Rob decides that Callie needs some like better roots, so she takes her back to her hometown and things start getting weird. I don't know exactly what this is about. I feel like the description is not very revealing, which is probably a good thing for a horror book, but I know Christine really liked this one, so I'm excited to read it for that reason. Next, this book is probably a little bit more true crime than anything, but I feel like it fit in this category anyway, and that is My Friend Anna by Rachel Deloche Williams. This is the nonfiction story. Anna Delvey, who was a self-proclaimed German heiress, scamming all of her friends and the people in her life out of a bunch of money. She ended up getting arrested. I think a lot of us know the story, especially because of the Netflix special that came out, which is the reason why I ended up picking this book up. Haven't read it yet, but I think it sounds really cool. I've always been super interested in that story ever since it came out, so I am super excited to get to this one, and I think it'll be really cool to have this different inside perspective. Next, I have Never Saw Me Coming by Vera Kurian. This is, I think, a dark academia thriller following our main character Chloe, who is a freshman in a university, and she's a part of this study of like 6 or 7 psychopaths. They're all being followed and monitored for this study, but Chloe has plans for her own as well. She is plotting to kill one of her childhood best friends, I think his name is Will, who wronged her. But all of this comes to a halt when one of the psychopaths from this study is murdered, and Chloe kind of finds herself becoming prey instead of the predator, and they have to figure out who the heck is doing this. And everyone's a psychopath, so you can't trust them. It sounds really interesting. I think it's gotten middling reviews, but it sounds like it might be a fun time. So next, I have The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. In this book, we're following our main character, Jess. There are so many characters with my name this year, but in the story, Jess needs a fresh start, so she decides to go and spend a little bit of time with her brother, who has an apartment in Paris. So she goes there, but when she gets there, Ben is not there. She thinks, oh, maybe he just like went somewhere and forgot to tell me. But as time goes by and Ben still does not appear, Jess realizes that something is very, very wrong, and Ben might have gotten himself mixed up in something unsavory, and she has to get to the bottom of it and find out where he went. This sounds really good. I honestly haven't heard a lot about it, and if I have, it's been negative. But I did really enjoy The Guest List by Lucy Foley, so I think that this one will be just like a fun, easy, quick read, hopefully. Next, I have Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. Rachel Hawkins wrote The Wife Upstairs, which was one of the worst books I read this year so far. I have not heard much better things about this one, but it's so pretty. Like, look at it. I think I'm still gonna try and read it. Basically, this is a mystery thriller following these 6 people that are on vacation on this tropical island, and they all are doing fine, but then I think they start going missing like one by one or something, and they have to figure out which one of them is killing them. I do love like a closed door, isolated mystery thriller, so I don't know, it might be fun. Next, I have The Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. This is a story following our main character Shay, who is a true crime blogger, and she gets the opportunity of a lifetime when she gets to interview this woman who was suspected but then acquitted of 2 cold cases from like 30 years ago. She's determined to finally get to the bottom of these cases and figure out if this woman was actually involved or not. But as she's interviewing her in this house, things are very strange. There's some like paranormal activity going on, weird things happening. I've heard that this book is creepy and fun. I really liked Simone St. James' release in 2020. Haven't been reading very many thrillers this year, but reading the description of this one made me really want to pick this one up, so we'll see. The next book I have here is The Maid by Nita Prose. In this story, we're following Molly, who is kind of an eccentric maid at this hotel, and her life is forever changed one day when she discovers a dead body while she is cleaning a hotel room. And I think because of her like quirky personality, I think she is autistic. She is suspected of this crime and she has to clear her name. Heard that this is a fun, cozy mystery. I love this cover too. It's so clean and pretty. So hopefully I'll get to this one sooner rather than later. Not very good at reading my TBR though, so we will see. I also have Breathless by Amy McCulloch. This is a snowy, isolated thriller following our main character Cecily, who is a journalist. She is going to this one of the highest peaks in the world to interview this man who has climbed a lot of them or something. And they are up in one of the most isolated mountains in the world, and somebody dies. And that could be a coincidence, it could be the conditions, but then somebody else dies. And so they think that there's probably a killer on the loose on this mountain. I love a snowy isolated thriller, so definitely want to read this one very soon. Probably no surprise to any of you, but I also have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This is Riley Sager's newest thriller release, and it's about Casey, who is our unreliable, alcoholic, crazy narrator. And she's obsessed with watching the people in this house across the lake from her house. But then when the wife vanishes, she suspects that the husband probably had something to do with it, but no one will listen to her because she's our crazy narrator. So heard bad things about this one. But I also heard bad things about Survive the Night, and I liked that one, so I don't know. Maybe this won't be fun. And last but not least, I have The Hacienda by Isabel Canas. This book is pitched as a mix between Mexican Gothic and Rebecca, which sounds super intriguing. And in this book, we're following our main character, Beatrice. Beatrice is kind of down on her luck, doesn't have a lot of options, so she agrees to a proposal from this man and goes to live with him in his hacienda. But there are very weird, likely supernatural things happening in this house, and Beatrice is very afraid, doesn't really know what to do about it. I really loved Mexican Gothic, and the description of this book definitely gives me very similar vibes, so I'm hopeful for this one as well. And those are all the thrillers that I have to share with you. So let's go ahead and talk about the fantasy books that I have to haul. The first fantasy book I have to haul is The Traitor Queen by Danielle Jensen. This is the second book in the British Kingdom series. In this series, we're following our main character, Laura, who has been trained her entire life to assassinate this rival king, and in order to set that plan in motion, she is sent over to marry him. But the goal is obviously to kill him. But then she realizes maybe my kingdom is the bad one and I might be in love with this guy. You know, classic fantasy romance stuff. I didn't love this one, but I do have it, so we are hauling it. The next book I have on the stack is So This Is Ever After by F.T. Lukens. This is a young adult fantasy romance story following our main character, Eric. Eric and his friends have been on this quest to end the reign of who they call the Vile One. He is this evil king, and now that they have killed him, they do that in like the first chapter, not a spoiler. The throne is empty, and so until they can find someone in the interim, Eric is like, I'll just be the figurehead for now. So they crown him. Turns out, bad idea. He's stuck in that now. He has to find a partner within 3 months before he turns 18, or else he is going to wither away. He starts trying to woo all his friends and fight this crush that he has on his best friend, who he thinks does not feel the same way. But of course, there's lots of mutual pining and miscommunication. This is a fun, like, goofy, quirky YA book. I really liked it, and it is so freaking pretty. Like, the cover art is so gorgeous. So I'm very happy to own this book, and I did really like it. I think I gave it 4 stars. The next couple books I have here are the Poppy War series. So I have the first one, The Poppy War, the second one, Dragon Republic, and the third one, The Burning God. We read this for the Fantasy Series book club this year. I liked it all right. I gave the first book 5 stars. I thought it was really good. I gave the second book 4 stars. Wasn't quite as good, still upright. And I gave the third book 3 stars because the ending sucked ass. If you didn't know, this story follows our main character, Rin. Rin is a war orphan. She's been downtrodden her whole entire life, but she really wants to make something of herself. So in the beginning of the story, she studies really hard for this entrance exam and gets into one of the best military academies in this world. She goes there to train. She still is trying her darndest to prove herself, but in the middle of her education, war breaks out in their country and she's shipped off to fight in this war. There is also a really cool magic system in this story. Rin finds out that she has the power to call upon the gods. She ends up being able to call on the phoenix, and so she can like produce fire and things. There's lots of other different shamans with different powers, but it was really cool learning about the magic system. The world is super detailed and super involved, and I also really loved the characters in this book. I did really like Rin. Katai is amazing. Venka is great. I loved all the characters in this book, which is why the last book sucks ass. But I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil anything. First book was great though. I loved it. Next on my stack, I have quite a few books in the ACOTAR series, although not all of them. I have the first book, A Court of Thorns and Roses. I have the second book, A Court of of Mist and Fury, and this is the 4th book, I think. A Court of Silver Flames. I've read these two and I've not read this one. If you somehow didn't know, this is a story following our main character Feyre. In the very beginning of this story, Feyre breaks a covenant or a treaty that the humans have with the fairies in this world, and she breaks this by killing another fairy. So this fairy named Tamlin, she killed his friend, so he comes to collect on this debt and takes Feyre to live with him in Fairy. And nothing happens in this book except Feyre screwing around in Fairy. It's very boring. I don't know why y'all like this book so much. And the first like 3 books I think are kind of like their own thing, and then this book is Nesta's book. Nesta is Feyre's sister. Haven't read this one. Will I? I don't know. This one came from Christine though, so thank you, Christine. And the final fantasy book I have to haul is Book of Night by Holly Black. This is Holly Black's adult fantasy debut, and the description does not do very much in helping me give you a explanation or a summary of this book, but we're following our main character Charlie, who is a thief of some kind. She's a really good lock picker, but I think she wants to like get away from being a thief, but then someone from her past comes back and she's forced to be a thief. I don't know. I've heard middling reviews of this book as well, which seems to be a theme here, but we will get into the romance here soon, which is saving the best for last, you know, so I don't know. But before we do hop into the romance, I'm going to do the miscellaneous books first so we can really just like save the best for last, you know. First book I have here is These Violent Delights by Micah Neveremmer. This maybe could have been included in the thriller section, but I wasn't quite sure. It feels more lit fic to me, but this is basically a gay dark academia book. We're following our main character Paul in the 1970s as he goes to college, and he finds this friend Julian and becomes kind of like obsessed with him, and I think Julian reciprocates these feelings. They become obsessed with each other, have a very like entangled toxic relationship, and I think that's it. I don't know. That was a very good description of this book. I haven't read it yet, but it sounds really cool. So next I have Night Sky with Exit Wounds by Ocean Vuong. This is a really tiny poetry collection, and it says it covers subjects of romance, family, memory, grief, war, and melancholia. And I read a couple of these poems in the bookshop before I bought this book, and they just were so beautiful and really spoke to me, so I had to pick this up. I have not read everything in this, but Ocean Vuong is like a very powerful writer. I need to read their like super popular novel, but I have this. The next book I have here is Love in the Big City by Sang-Young Park. This is a translated work from Korean. This is basically kind of like a character study of our main character in his like young adult years. In the back it says it's a wry portrait of millennial loneliness as well as the abundant joys of queer life. I don't know. It really spoke to me in the bookstore, so I decided to get it. I don't read a ton of translated works and want to read more. This one seemed like a good place to start. The next book I have here is After Parties by Anthony Vaisana So. This is a collection of short stories about Cambodian Americans, and I think this book really dives into the intersectionality between being queer and being an immigrant, which I think sounds super interesting. This one sounds very different than what I typically read, but tangentially related, so I'm super excited to pick this one up as I don't read a ton of short stories. Alright, and then I do have 2 YA books to talk about really quick. I don't read a ton of YA anymore, but every once in a while there is one that really speaks to me. So first of which is I Kissed Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. This is Casey McQuiston's YA debut that came out earlier this year, following our main character Chloe, who one day is kissed by Shara Wheeler, the like most popular girl in school, and then Shara disappears. But Shara leaves Chloe a letter, and Chloe thinks that Shara wants her to find her. So she sets off and teams up with Shara's next door neighbor and boyfriend, who Shara also kissed both of them and left them letters. And so they kind of band together and form this unlikely friendship and bond over finding Shara. This was very Paper Towns-esque, and I didn't really love Chloe or Shara, although I did really like a lot of the side characters. So this one was not as successful as previous Casey McQuiston books for me. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I do really like Casey's writing and thought it was a fun time, but just not quite the best book for me personally. And then I also have Kiss and Tell by Adib Khorram. This book is giving me One Direction vibes, which is 100% why I picked it up. In this book, we're following our main character Hunter, who is a part of this boy band, and he and another member of the boy band were dating, and then they broke up. And now he's in this new relationship, but a lot of his business is getting leaked online. It's threatening his like new relationship, and he's dealing with like the troubles of being in this boy band controlled by this controlling management. Can you say One Direction? I'm excited for this one and hope it lives up to my expectations. and fulfills the One Direction shaped hole in my heart. All right, and now what we have all been waiting for, well, I don't know if you guys have been waiting for it, but I've been waiting for it, and that is my pile of romance to haul. Let's get into it. So it looks like I kind of unwittingly organized these into like traditionally published straight rom-coms and queer romances. So first we're going to talk about the traditionally published like straight rom-coms. First one I have here is One Night on the Island by Josie Silver. In this book we're following our main characters Cleo and Mark. They both book solo trips to this remote Irish island in this cottage, and because of a mix-up in bookings, of course they booked the same week, and the ferry only runs once a week, so they're both stuck there. Of course, this like forced proximity kind of thing turns into a romance. Josie Silver hasn't worked for me in the past. I'm actually doing a fun video where I'm like giving authors I didn't like a second chance, and I'm including this book in that video, so if you're interested, subscribe for that video. Should be out soon. Next on my pile, I have The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. This was a like 3-star book for me. It didn't quite work, but it was still a fun time. Follows our main characters, Catalina and Aaron. They are workplace rivals slash enemies, but Catalina needs a date to a wedding in Spain, and Aaron volunteers to help her out. Even though they have quite a bit of animosity between them, they end up falling for one another, of course. Next, I have It Happened One Summer and Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. These are like companion novels about two sisters. In this first book, we're following Piper. Piper is, I think this is kind of like Schitt's Creek kind of vibes. Haven't seen that show, but Piper is kind of a wild child. Her stepdad decides that enough is enough, and he sends her off to this small town to learn some responsibility. This is like a small seaside town, and her late father owned this bar that she and her sister are going to work to learn some responsibility. And there she meets this grumpy fisherman named Brendan, and they have a romance. I've heard such good things about this one. I do definitely want to try and get to this one soon, hopefully this summer, because it's the perfect time to read it. Hello. And then the second book, Hook, Line, and Sinker, is a friends to lovers kind of deal following Piper's sister Hannah. I think it also has like a reformed Playboy type of deal going on. I think people tend to like the first one more, but this one looks cute too, so hopefully I will read these very soon, before summer's over. Next, I have a whole stack of Colleen Hoover books, our favorite gal. Just kidding. First, I have Ugly Love, which is a weird story about Miles and Tate. Miles is he's very grumpy, very closed off, doesn't want anything serious, but he and Tate are very attracted to one another, so they decide to set up like a friends with benefits kind of deal. Miles was very hurt previously in his life. That's the reason why he doesn't want to get into something serious, but they end up falling in love and dealing with grief and blah blah blah. I didn't like this book. I gave it 2 stars. Next, I have It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. This is a story following our main character, Lily Bloom, who owns a flower shop because of course she does. Lily meets this new guy named Ryle. He ends up being abusive, and it's okay because Lily is still hung up on her ex from her past, Atlas, who she runs into again. This is a story that's trying to do something good, but in my opinion did not succeed. I thought it was so corny and poorly written, and I was not a fan of it. Sorry girlies, this is not a good book. It's just not. I appreciate the sentiment and thought it was a good portrayal in terms of like how a abusive relationship typically starts out as a good fun thing, and you don't necessarily see the red flags until you're in too deep, but this just was not good. It's not well written. Sorry. On the other hand, I did really like Regretting You by Colleen Hoover, which follows a mother-daughter pair after they lose their husband/father and their subsequent romances. They also learn that their husband/father was not who they thought he was, and how to like deal with the grief of losing him, as well as the grief of like grieving who they thought he was and not being able to reconcile that with him in person in real life. I thought this was really good. I thought it dealt with grief very well, and I liked the characters and the romances. I thought this one was well written. I gave this one 4 stars, I think. And last but not least, I have Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, which was the very first Colleen Hoover book I read and my favorite. This book follows our main character Kenna, who has just finished serving a sentence in jail for being involved in the death of her previous boyfriend. But the conflict in this book comes in when Kenna, after leaving jail, really wants to have a relationship with the daughter that she had while she was in prison and that got taken away from her. Her parental rights have been terminated, so she has no right to her daughter, but she goes back to this town where her daughter is living with her boyfriend's parents, is just trying to figure out a plan how to plead with them to have a relationship with her daughter. She also meets her boyfriend's best friend and they kind of strike up a relationship. I feel like It Ends With Us had to stumble and fall for reminders of him to run, because I feel like it was trying to do a similar thing where it was like taking this moral quandary, this moral issue, and making you look at it from multiple different ways, making you reevaluate the way you view like life and forgiveness, which I really thought was done super well. I liked this one a lot and I gave it 4.5 stars. Would recommend. I'm tired of talking. Next here I have Weather Girl by Rachel Lynn Solomon. This book follows our main character Ari, who is a meteorologist. In this book, Ari teams up with Russell, who is her coworker and like sports reporter, I think, to try and get their bosses back together because they are split up and still hung up on one another, I think. So they like devise this plan to meddle in their bosses' love lives, but along the way, Ari and Russell fall in love themselves. This sounds cute. I didn't like Rachel's previous release last year, so this is also going to be in that video with One Night on the Island, if you're interested. The next book I have here is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I mostly bought this book because I thought it was so cool that this bookstore had this indie self-published book in it. This is a billionaire romance between Rowan and Zara. Rowan comes from this family who owns this like Disney World type chain of amusement parks. I think he's like the CEO of it or something. I don't know, but Zara I think is his assistant and he's very hard to work with and grumpy, but they fall in love. I've heard that the second book in this series is better than this first one, but I do have some friends that really like this one, so want to read it at some point. Same with Twisted Love by Anna Wong. I just thought it was so cool that the bookstore had this in physical copy. This is a bodyguard romance, I think. No, actually, I think this is a best friend's brother romance, but I do think it's kind of like Alex is supposed to watch over Ava or something. There's some kind of thing going on, but we're following Alex and Ava, yeah, in their romance, and Alex is tasked by his best friend to look after his little sister for some reason. I don't know. I don't know what this is about other than that it's a romance. Okay, and now to the queer romances, which is my true heart's joy. So let's hop into it. First, I have the Heartstopper series. Of course, I had to buy the regular first edition as well as the TV tie-in edition. Obviously, I had to have both. I mean, look at their faces. They're so cute. They're so cute. I can't. If you didn't know, this is a graphic novel series written by Alice Oseman, following our main characters, Nick and Charlie. It's kind of a coming of age, first love in high school kind of story. It is so wholesome. It has a wonderful friend group and the TV show is amazing. So I had to reread all of the volumes, so I had to buy them, obviously. Next I have Yerba Buena by Nina LaCour. This will be the first adult book by Nina LaCour that I've read, I believe. I think this is a sapphic romance, but I think it's like kind of quiet and sad in tone as well. So I don't think it's like it's not a rom-com is what I'm trying to say. Sarah and Emily both work at this restaurant. I think Emily might own the restaurant and Sarah is hired to be like the floral arranger for this restaurant because it's kind of like a fancy restaurant, you know. There's an age gap between them and they both have like difficult pasts, but they fall in love. It's so beautiful and I've loved Nina LaCour in the past, so I have a good feeling that I will like this book as well. My piles are so precarious. This is a book that I got all the way in January, but I had to throw it in here because we're doing all of the books I've hauled all year. And that is Love and Other Disasters by Anita Kelly. This is a queer rom-com following our main characters Dahlia and London, who are both contestants on this cooking TV show. They kind of have like a bad first impression meet cute because London is like pretty quiet and shy and Dahlia is really bubbly and outgoing, but they get over that hurdle and end up really liking each other. London is non-binary, which is really cool rep to have in this romance, and I just thought this was so sweet and fun and I loved it so much. Okay, on to the last pile. I think I only have like 10 more books left. Let's go. First on the list, I have The Perks of Loving a Wallflower by Erica Ridley. This is a female-female historical romance. I'm not quite sure what the plot of this book is, but I know one of our main characters, her name is Thomasina, but she goes by Tommy, likes to disguise herself as man. I really don't know what the plot of this book is, but I don't need to look at it. I don't really need any more than this cover to be convinced to read this book, okay? Okay. Next, I have the second and third book in Alexandra Bellefleur's Written in the Stars series. The second one is called Hang the Moon, and the third one is called Count Your Lucky Stars. These two books follow characters that we met in the first book. This second book follows Brendan, who is the brother of the love interest in Written in the Stars, his romance with this woman named Annie. And then this third book follows Margot and Olivia and is a sapphic friends to lovers romance. Margot is the best friend of the main character of Written in the Stars. I know all of these characters from having read the first book, so I'm excited to see their respective romances. I was gonna skip this one because it's a straight romance. I think that they might both be bisexual, so it's not a straight romance, but I think you kind of need to read them in order somewhat. Plus, I really liked the first one, so I think that will both be good. Next, I have Love, Hate, and Clickbait by Liz Bowery. This is a male-male rom-com following Tom and Clay, who are workplace enemies, rivals in this political campaign office. And at the beginning of this book, Tom and Clay like genuinely hate each other. They hate one another's personalities. They think each other are like abhorrent, which is very intense because they do end up falling in love in the end. Basically, the premise of this story is that they are arguing in the break room when this journalist walks into the office and he thinks that they're about to make out. He runs this story about it. The politician that they work for asks them to lean into it because she has been recently criticized for not having any LGBTQIA+ folk on her, like working in her office. So she's like, you need to play this up. It got cute in the end, but it wasn't a favorite. It's like a very average 3-star read for me. Next, I have Chef's Kiss by TJ Alexander, which I think is like the exact same plot as Love and Other Disasters by Nita Kelly. We're basically following our main characters, Simone and Ray. They both work in the same office. They're like, I think they're on some kind of like food magazine, and Simone is like a recipe developer and Ray is a camera person, and they have to work together. Simone's never been on video before, but the magazine wants to like try out some video content. Ray is like the producer of the video content, so they're forced to work together. I think we got a grumpy sunshine thing going on. I think Simone is like a little bit grumpy and Ray is very sunshiny. Ray comes out as non-binary at work, and so that adds a little extra layer of spice to the romance, and I think that they end up obviously like falling in love. Honestly, even if it is an exact copy of Love and Other Disasters, I really liked Love and Other Disasters, so I'm not mad about it, and I think it sounds cute. And I love food, so and I love it in my books and in my romances, so I think that this one will be a hit for me. Next, I have A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, which is perhaps the book I'm most excited to read in all of this whole pile of books. This is a Regency romance following our main character Viola. Viola reinvents herself after being presumed dead in this war. I think she was fighting as a soldier or something, and by reinventing herself, she decides to live as a woman. So we have a trans main character in this Regency romance, which is amazing. Chef's Kiss, I love it. I think she has a romance with her childhood best friend Justin, which is just so cute. So I am so excited for this book. It's very long, but in my opinion, Alexis Hall can do no wrong, so I'm so excited to read this book. Next, I have Total Creative Control by Joanna Chambers and Sally Malcolm. This is a male-male rom-com. It is a grumpy sunshine workplace romance. We're following Aaron and Lewis. Aaron is Lewis's boss. Lewis has been Aaron's like personal assistant for quite a few years, and Aaron has always been, I think they've always been kind of attracted to each other, but really just wanted to keep things professional. But then they go away to this like work retreat or work conference or something, and lines start to get crossed and romance starts to blossom. So we've got like a forced proximity that sparks the romance kind of deal. And yes, I just love buying this year like paperback romances because they're so easy to read at work. For legal reasons, I'm not reading at work, but you know, I am, so that's one of the reasons why I got this one. Same for Out of Character by Annabeth Albert. This is another male-male rom-com. Follows Jasper and Milo. Jasper and Milo used to be best friends in high school, but then something happened to turn them into enemies. But then I think that they like come back together, become friends again, and then fall in love. And I think this story involves like nerdy cosplay elements and things, so it sounds really cute. I liked the first book in this like companion series, Conventionally Yours, so I have a good feeling about this one as well. Of course, I also had to buy Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is Ashley Herring Blake's adult romance debut, and it is a sapphic romance following our main characters Delilah and Claire. Delilah has been estranged from her family for quite a while, but she is convinced to come back to her hometown and photograph her stepsister's wedding because her stepmother is going going to pay her quite a bit of money. And while she's there, she reconnects with Claire, who is one of her stepsister Astrid's best friends. Claire's going to be in the wedding. Sparks fly between the two, but there are a number of things keeping them apart, like Astrid for one, as well as the fact that Claire has a daughter and roots in this town, whereas Delilah lives in New York City and doesn't really want to have anything to do with her hometown. But the two of them, as well as Astrid's other friend Iris, kind of team up because they're determined to get Astrid away from the man that she's trying to marry because he's not a good guy. So during that scheme, Delilah and Claire grow closer, and this was so cute and fun, and I really loved it. And it's just the most perfect floppy romance, so buy this if you don't have it already. And then I have a couple more indie romances. Of course, I hauled Unhinged by Only James. This is one of my favorite books of the year so far. This is the first book in her Necessary Evil series, following the Mulvaney family, who are a bunch of psychopathic brothers who have been raised by their adopted father to kill people. But the catch is that they only kill bad people, so they're actually the good guys, you know. We love vigilante murder. But this first book is a story of Adam, who is the youngest brother, and his romance with Noah, who is the son of one of the men that Adam killed, which is really cute. This first book just has like such a special place in my heart. It's the first dark romance I ever read, and it really drove me down the Kindle Unlimited rabbit hole, and now I'm stuck, but I have never been happier in my entire life. So I love this book so much. It's so special to me and annotated up, and I love it. And last but certainly not least is another book that Christine got me. Well, she let me have the other book. She actually bought me this one because she's the best. And that is Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. This is one of the first like indie male romances I ever read, so it has a special place in my heart for that reason, and I absolutely love it. It follows our main characters, Jamie and Ryan, who are both hockey players and like childhood best friends, but they haven't been in contact for the past 4 years because they're playing for different teams, but also something a little spicy happened between them. Ryan freaked out and went ghost on Jamie. But they, I think, are playing each other for the first time. Yeah, their college teams are set to face off in the national championship. He'll finally get a chance to apologize and maybe realize that they could have been together the whole time. I am so excited to reread this book here soon. I love it so much. So thank you, Christine. And with that is every single book that I've hauled so far in 2022. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if I should prioritize any of these books that I haven't read yet. If you've loved them, please let me know and I will shoot them up my TBR or try to. But yes, that is going to be all for me today. Definitely like this video if you liked it and subscribe down below if you want to see more bookish content from me. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Goodreads if you want to keep up with my reading on the day-to-day. And I did want to say thank you again to Blackstone Publishing for sponsoring this video. And don't forget, if you would like a copy of Pignon Scorpion for yourself, definitely click the link in the description down below. Buy yourself a copy. And with that, that's all I have today. So thank you again so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.